Hello and welcome to the Fit to Transform podcast, where you learn how to train and diet effectively and, most importantly, how to maintain those results for life, once and for all. I'm Nikias Tomasiello, a transgender training and nutrition coach working online with anyone who's ready for a true lifestyle transformation, anywhere they may be in the world. As a friendly reminder, any and all information provided is for educational purposes only. You should consult with your doctor before implementing any changes to your diet and exercise program. With that disclaimer out of the way, thank you for being here. Now grab yourself a cup of tea or pre-workouts and enjoy. Yo, welcome back to the podcast and thank you for tuning in. Today I have a mini Mindset Musing episode, an MMM, or a triple M, which I haven't posted in quite some time. And today I want to reflect on how to think about and therefore how to make better choices at a social meal. And it's coming for you today on Christmas Eve, just in time. I know, I'm awesome and you are welcome. Anyway, I was just reflecting on this with a client today. I'm recording this on Sunday, December 22nd. So I am super inspired. I know exactly what I want to tell you in this particular episode. And this is my approach to a social meal that's going to help you make better choices. First, I want to caveat this by saying that it's not going to help with binge eating or binge eating disorder, because the root cause of binge eating is emotional. So you will need to build a toolkit to be able to understand your emotions, become aware of them, and cope with them in a way that doesn't include food in order to recover from binge eating disorder or to overcome binge eating episodes. However, if you're somebody who struggles with eating a little bit too much and making choices that you're not proud of at a social event, then this is the episode for you. And my approach is two-pronged, and it takes into account the short term and the long term. In the short term, a really important reflection to make is the following. The calorie content of every bite stays the same, but the pleasure that comes from every bite changes. And I was reflecting on this exact frame of mind in episode 127. So I recommend you listen to that one if you haven't already for a much more detailed explanation of this. In any case, even if you don't listen, it's as simple and straightforward as it sounds. The more bites of the same food you take, the more the pleasure you get from these bites diminishes, but the calorie content stays the same. So if you eat slowly and you check in with yourself, wondering whether it still tastes just as good as you would want it to taste, it can really help you stop when the pleasure to calorie ratio stops making sense to you. I'm going to give you a practical example. Yesterday, on Saturday, I had a festive meal with my partner and we went out to an all-you-can-eat restaurant that served food in a buffet style. So while the website had some vague descriptions of what they might serve, I couldn't make a specific plan like I normally would. So when I showed up, I applied this exact short-term thinking, and I was as conscious as I possibly could of every bite that I took, and I left on my plate a few choices that didn't even taste as good as I wanted them to taste on the first bite, or I stopped before finishing the portion I had on my plate for choices where the initial bites were very good, but then after a few I was satiated. And I finished a few portions of what I had that I was really, really enjoying, where to the last bite, the pleasure to calorie ratio was still really effective for me. It was still really worth it. And what happened was that I ended up not eating any of the carbohydrate choices really, because I wasn't super fond of the noodles and potatoes and fries they had. I had a bite and I thought, you know what, this is so much plainer than I thought. Some of these are even cold. I'm not going to finish this just because it's on my plate. On the other hand, I ate quite a bit more of the protein options because they had some amazing beef and mushroom stir fry and salt and pepper prawns, which I'm a sucker for. They had some lamb, which was nice. I had a couple of bites of that. Then for my carbs and fats, rather than the savory carbohydrate options that I wasn't a fan of, I had my fill of dessert. They had a variety of tiny cake bites rather than full on big slices. So I had a few of those and I tried various different variations that I thought I would like. I tried a cookies and cream cake and I really liked the cream, but I ended up leaving the Oreos on top because I'm not a fan of dark chocolate. I had 2 bites of the chocolate fudge because it was excellent and it made me realize actually what the best part was the fudge at the top rather than the spongy cake. I had a bite called banana caramel chiffon cake, and that tasted amazing because I love sponge cake in particular. The texture was really pleasing to me. And I had 2 pieces of Eton mess because I'm a huge fan of Eton mess cake as well. So at first I went for a piece of each of those that I found most interesting, and then I went back for a second piece of the chocolate fudge and the Eton mess because I realized that those were the ones I enjoyed the most. And I didn't finish the Oreos on top of the cookies and cream cake because they just didn't appeal to me at all. And now moving on to the second prong, that's the long-term thinking. I ask myself, how do I want to feel afterwards? And I encourage you to do the same because in the short term, the food that you're eating may taste really, really good, but if you eat too much of it, you're going to feel sluggish, excessively full, bloated, worst case scenario, even like you want to throw up, like you're physically sick. And if that's how you want to feel, then I respect your choice. But personally, when I went to this all-you-can-eat buffet, that wasn't how I wanted to feel. I was going to go to the cinema afterwards. It was lunchtime, so I had the whole day still ahead of me. I didn't really want to mess it up by feeling excessively full. So normally I suggest that my clients stop when they feel 80% full, whereby they've eaten enough that it's going to tide them over until the next meal. But if somebody said, hey, are you up for a slice of dessert? They could have it. They would have the space, but they don't need it. So they don't engage in that extra bit of eating. Now, for this particular meal, my goal was to make it into a festive meal where I was okay with consciously eating past that 80% fullness, but I didn't want to feel 100% full because to me, that 100% would mean feeling so full that I am physically uncomfortable. I didn't want to get there. I wanted somewhere in between, so a 90% level of fullness, and in combination with the short-term frame of mind of eating until the calorie to pleasure ratio no longer worked for me, helped me get what I wanted from that meal, whereby by the end of it, I was certainly fuller than usual, but I wasn't so full that I didn't want to eat dinner or that I felt physically uncomfortable while watching the movie, which was Sonic the Hedgehog 3, by the way, and it was so much fun. I strongly recommend the whole Sonic series. Anyway, tangent over, and also we've come to the end of this mini Mindset Musing episode. In closing, I want to address 2 questions that might have come up for you as you were listening to this so far. The first question is, Nick, it sounds like you ate just protein and dessert at this restaurant. How is that a balanced meal? Well, first, dear listeners, I have to clarify that I also ate quite a bit of vegetables. But the most important point I want to make is that you can make the choice not to have a balanced meal and instead to achieve balance across the day or even across the entire week. On this particular occasion, I chose to have an unbalanced meal whereby I had protein, vegetables, and then a combination of carbs and fats from dessert and not very much fiber, because the rest of the day I prioritized having more vegetables, more fruit, so that by the end of the day, I hit my fiber goal as well. That's why when talking about nutrition, what's really important is the average of your behaviors over time, and you can't really make any sort of judgment on somebody else's diet based on a single meal. I would never do that with a client because I need to have a picture of what they eat on average rather than what they ate on Christmas Day, for example. The second question you might have is, Nick, you always advise to make sure that you have a filling meal so that you don't overeat at social events. But dessert isn't very filling, whereas you mentioned having roast potatoes, which you decided not to eat, and those are much more filling, so what's up with that? And again, you can understand the principles of balanced eating, how to feel full so that you don't overeat, and you can then make a decision on whether you want to adhere to them or not. In this particular case, I was well aware that the roast potatoes would have been more filling, the noodles as well would have been more filling than choosing dessert instead. But I was okay with feeling less full because I wanted to prioritize eating food that I actually enjoyed. And I still was able to fill myself up by eating the protein sources that I've mentioned as well as the vegetables. I think this is a useful point to close on because there can be an impression that you need to always adhere to the most optimal principles of nutrition or training in order to get the best results. Whereas in my view, this has a potential to lead to a mindset of restriction and perfectionism that eventually leads to you giving up because you feel that you can't be perfect. I believe that you can only be successful if you keep showing up because, again, it's the average of your behaviors over time that dictates the kind of results you get. So rather than nurturing perfectionism and restriction, I believe that it's more valuable to acknowledge that these principles are important and on average you need to adhere to them if you want to get the results you aspire to. But you can also make the choice not to on certain specific occasions for a very specific reason. That is going to prevent you from feeling like you're failing whenever you can't be 100% perfect. It's going to prevent you from feeling restricted, and it is going to lead to you showing up far more often than you would otherwise. And that's what I want to close this podcast with, my dear listeners. So for this Christmas and any other festive meal that you might be having in the next few days, remember the two-pronged approach. Prong number 1, the calorie to pleasure ratio, and prong number 2, how do you want to feel afterwards? And on that note, have the best festive season, and I will talk to you very soon. Lastly, if you want to support the podcast and help me reach more people, please leave a 5-star rating or review on any podcast platform that you're using. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.